If you don't know, Russia's largest tech company, Vladtech, have spent the last 10 years creating an interface to your brain that somehow embeds a code into every atom of you. So when you die, they can then locate that code within you, and it's like an Apple AirTag, but on a more expensive, grander level. So they can basically see where your electricity, spirit, and memories go to. And they call it a SIC code, soul.
This question, what happens after we die? It's a really interesting question, but it's not new. It's been there for a really long time. Even in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna asks Krishna this question, Prayanakale Chakatham. What happens at Prayanakale, at the time of death? What happens at that time? So it has, what do you say? It's occupied our fantasy. It's occupied our intelligence for a long time. If we have to put in a lot of effort in to not think about this question. So it's good that people are thinking about it. Now I'm going to read a little section from the Bhagavad Gita, where the Bhagavad Gita itself explains. The author of the Bhagavad Gita explains this point. So I'm going to read a little section. Now the word prayana kale in this verse is very significant. Is very significant because whatever we do in this life will be tested at the time of death. Now that's a really super important point because we think I'm working and now it's my downtime. And when it's my downtime, I do whatever I want. I'm having fun. It's just some innocent fun. I'm just doing some crazy things. It's just some innocent, crazy things. But yogis see the world differently because they understand, innocent or not, momentary or not, every activity leaves an impression on your mind. Imagine if you had something very, very delicate and you momentarily stepped on it, it will instantly crack. So it doesn't matter if it's momentary or not, but the yogis understand that there is this impact. It's called samskaras. We develop this. So you may, it's not that at the time of death, I'm in a good home, in a good place, in a good neighborhood, and everything will go well. Nah. How we live our life throughout, it leaves an impression and it influences where you go and what happens at the time of death. So let's just keep reading this. Arjuna is very anxious to know of those who are constantly engaged in bhakti. And I'm just going to jump ahead. At the time of death, all the bodily functions are disrupted and the mind is not in a proper condition. Thus disturbed by the bodily situation, one may not be able to remember the Supreme Lord. So this kind of an idea that at the time of death, everything's, someone passed away happily in their sleep or peacefully in their sleep. It's a very misconceived idea. And it's, where it's coming from? It's coming from the fact that we, throughout our life, have built confidence, faith in seeing is believing. Our eyes are just everything. What I see. So you see someone lying peacefully and you think it's just peacefully. You see someone sitting up agitated, you think it's that. We're so used to depending on our eyes. That's like because science teaches us, right? The observer and the observed. So I'm the observer and I am the body. So my eyes are the only observer and I see the observed. But what happens when you're sleeping? You're sleeping, you're lying in the bed, your eyes are closed, and someone turns the light on. You instantly wake up. Why? Your eyes were closed. There's something about us that's observing the lights, that's hearing the sounds, that's feeling things. Even when we are sleeping, there is something that is perceiving. So, is there another observer in this city called the body? Actually, the Bhagavad Gita refers to the body as a city of 9 gates, calls it the city of 9 gates. It doesn't say it's the self, there's the city of 9 gates. We can talk about that another time. But in this city, besides these physical eyes, is there somebody inside that we are not aware of? And if we don't know that observer, we might be on the wrong track about where we want to head. And so this question about what happens after we die, can only be answered if we can first think about who are we. This question about where am I headed can only be answered if you can first answer who am I and who else is with me. Am I alone in this body or are there other people? I mean, think about it. Your body has so many germs living in it. So when you die, those germs are still living. So who does the body belong to? Does it belong to you or does it belong to all the germs that are living there? It's so many bacteria, so many viruses, so many things in the body. So who does this body actually belong to? And that will get you to think more deeply about who am I, which is what Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita is trying to pull us to see. And in a few verses down, he starts to give a hint towards what will determine what happens after death. Everyone doesn't get the same destination. Everyone doesn't have the same experience. Might be like newsflash, but it's true. What seems to ordinary eyes as peaceful is not peaceful. What seems to ordinary eyes as painful is not painful. There is a deeper reality. So Krishna says, Antakale, he says, no, he says, Yam Yam Vapi Smaran Bhava, Tyajante Ante Kalevaram. He says, whatever state of consciousness, Yam Yam Bhavam, Yam Yam Vapi Smaran Bhava, whatever stage of consciousness you have at the time of the moment of death, Ante Kalevaram, when you're tyaja, when you're leaving the body at the last moment, whatever your consciousness is, that determines where you go. So we just read that at the time of death, all the bodily functions stop. And I was actually kind of like shaken by that statement. I was, if I have a little upset stomach or something's not good, you've kind of like had some medication or something, you just don't even want to get out of bed. Like you just feel so out of whack. If some one little thing with your body is not functioning right, we just can't function. Not all the bodily functions are going to simultaneously stop. Your throat chokes up, your stomach's completely choked up, all the openings in your body are blocked, and you're kind of like stuffy, stuck. You can't move, you have no energy. It's a very uncomfortable position. So in that I know when I'm sick, I'm like, not feeling so excited about life. So in that state, whatever consciousness is there, that will come. That's where your destination is. That seems like a very bad deal. All my organs are failing. See, it is not a bad deal. Life is actually a preparation to detach ourselves from the bodily reality. But we take it as God's given us a body, we should really enjoy it. We're misunderstanding the purpose of life. Goal of life, goal of coming into this world is to change not just the world outside of us, change our inner world. We have human body. It's a tool given to us. It's not us. It's a tool given to us. And the purpose of this tool is to try and figure out why that this is a temporary material world and I belong to a different reality, that I'm an eternal soul. But we are misusing the tool and we're thinking it has no consequences, because if you don't use the tool correctly, you keep coming back. So Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita explains the different destinations of the soul based on their consciousness. There are 3 material and 1 transcendental destination. So it's explained, Urdhvam Gachanti Sattvasta, that if you have lived your life in the mode of goodness, if you have actually cultivated healthy, fulfilling habits all through your life, Urdhvam Gachanti Sattvasta. So if you've lived your life in the mode of goodness, then you go to the higher planetary systems, or you go to higher species of life. More like you see these demigods, angels, different species of life with more power, more intelligence, better facilities of life. So, Urdhvam Gachanti Sattvasta. Madhye Tishtanti Rajasa. So if you lived your life in the mode of passion, always like running after things, achievement, desires, passion, which is most of the world today. If you've lived in that kind of a mode, Madhya Tishtanti Rajasa, you live in the middle planetary systems, you live in, like you kind of continue that cycle of passion. And the final destination is Jagana Guna Vrittasya Adhauganchanti Tamasa, that those who have lived their lives doing really abominable activities, like horrible activities, you've developed those qualities, you go downwards into different, like lower species of life. So you reduce, you go to lower species of life, meaning you could become an animal, or can become an insect. You can go to many lower species of life if your activities are such. So, for example, mass slaughtering of animals, great example of something like we've, as a society, have arranged for mass slaughter of animals through factory farming and things. This is Jaganna Guna Vrittasya. This is very like horrible activities, and this pushes us. This is just one activity. I'm not just harping in on one activity, but I'm giving an example. There's many such activities that you can think of that are damaging to yourself, that are damaging to the environment, that are damaging to other species. Don't just think of human beings or those human beings you love. Think of all species. Everyone's God's creation. not just you and the ones you love. So Jaganna Gunavrittasya Adhau Gachanti Tamasa. Those who live their life in the mode of ignorance, they go down this down the evolutionary chain. It's not. And then he says, so these are the modes, based on how you live your life. If you're living in material nature, but then outside of all of this, Antakale Chamamevam, um, Krishna says, at the time of death, the one who thinks about just me, Antakale Chamamevam, Smaran Muktva Kalevaram, like remembering Krishna as you leave this body, that person definitely goes to the spiritual reality. Now, how are you going to do that when your body is failing, your mind's failing, all your organs are failing? How are you going to remember Krishna at that point? So it's explained that throughout our life, what we practice, that is what comes into our consciousness at the point of death. So really, if you want to answer the question about what happens after you die, you have to really analyze the way you're living your life. The way you live your life will determine the experience after you die. If you live a life of devotional service, if you live a life of spiritual progress, you don't have to be a great person, you don't have to be a famous person, but if you follow the great, if you serve the great, automatically when the body is kind of giving up, because your faith, it's not a matter of circumstances at the time of death, it's a matter of faith. You have developed faith in the saintly people throughout your life, or you've developed faith in money. Best medical facility will give me the best thing at the time of death. Or you've developed faith in just having fun. Whatever faith you have developed at the moment of death, that consciousness will come in. And that's going to determine where you go next to pursue those very desires. As we wrap up this question about what happens after death, I've been thinking and reflecting about different philosophies and philosophers that exist and different prophets that exist. For example, you see Buddhism talks about, Buddha teaches about how after you die, you merge into nothingness. There's Shankaracharya, he talks about impersonal philosophy. There's Jesus Christ who talks about what happens after death. There's so many personalities out there. And maybe there's a little difference between what they describe about what happens death, by like one might say this happens, another might say that happens, but nobody is actually speaking that through your life the main goal is to make plans for happiness and enjoyment and how to have more and more and more. No one's teaching that. So while it's an interesting and fun question to think about what happens after death, the most important question is how we live, because that does determine what happens after death. And actually, the Bhagavad Gita will explain that as long as you're alive, as long as you have this body, you can choose your karma, you can choose how to act and determine where you go. But once the body falls, karmena divyanetrena, based on your karma and based on divine supervision, divyanetrena, yantra rudrani maya, material nature, material energy will provide you the body that you deserve, not what you desire.